Welcome to Once Upon English.
Imagine this: a boy born in a small ancient town who grows up to shape every science you study, every logic you use, every question you ask, and every way you understand the world. Now imagine something even crazier, that this man lived 2,300 years ago, yet your entire life is still built on his ideas. Today, you're not just hearing a story. You're stepping into the mind of the one person who taught kings, challenged legends, and rewrote the rules of human knowledge alone. Stay with me, because once you see how Aristotle became the engine behind Western thought, you'll never look at learning, wisdom, or even yourself the same way again. The boy who wanted to understand everything. Everything began long before the world knew what philosophy really meant. On a warm morning in ancient Greece, in a small city called Stagira, a child named Aristotle opened his eyes to a world full of questions. He was not a loud or restless boy. In fact, he was quiet, sometimes too quiet. But behind those calm eyes, something bright was burning: curiosity. Hungry, unstoppable curiosity. Other children played in the dusty streets, laughing, wrestling, chasing each other. But Aristotle, he preferred to sit alone under the shade of an old fig tree with pieces of wood, stones, small animals, and plants around him, observing, comparing, thinking. His father, Nicomachus, was a respected doctor, so the house was always filled with herbs, strange tools, medical books, and conversations about the human body. Aristotle listened to every word. He never forgot anything. He wanted to know not just what things were, but why they were. Why did people get sick? Why did stars move? Why did one plant grow tall and another stay small? Why did the heart beat? Why did human beings act the way they act? These were unusual questions for a child, but Aristotle was not an ordinary child. His life changed early. When he was still young, both of his parents died. Instead of breaking him, this loss made him even more determined. He decided that understanding the world was the only way not to feel lost inside it. So at the age of 17, an age when most young people barely knew what to do with their lives, Aristotle did something bold. He traveled to Athens, the center of learning in the ancient world, and there, beyond the busy markets and the powerful city walls, he found something that would transform his destiny forever. A school called the Academy, and inside it, a teacher whose name shook the world: Plato. Aristotle entered the Academy not as a genius, but as a listener, a quiet observer, a young man ready to absorb the universe like a sponge. He didn't know yet that he would soon become Plato's brightest student, and later, even greater than his master. But all great stories begin softly, with a boy, with a question, with a fire inside, and Aristotle's fire was just beginning to burn. The student who outgrew his teacher. Aristotle entered the academy with quiet steps, almost invisible among the excited young men who dreamed of becoming philosophers. The academy was a magical place for the minds of that time, full of debates, long walks, arguments, and ideas that could shake an entire city. Plato, the legendary philosopher, noticed Aristotle very quickly, not because he talked loudly, not because he wanted attention, but because he listened in a different way. When others listened to memorize ideas, Aristotle listened to test them, to question them, to see where they broke and where they survived. He asked sharp questions, questions that made older students uncomfortable, questions that even surprised Plato. Soon, people inside the academy whispered about the brilliant student from Stagira. Aristotle became the shining star of the school, and Plato grew proud of him. But something else began to grow, too. Something delicate and dangerous. A difference in vision. Plato believed the world we touch and see is only a shadow of a perfect world beyond it. A world of ideal forms. A world that could not be touched, only imagined. But Aristotle didn't buy that. He believed the truth was here, in the tree, not in the idea of a tree, in the bird, not in the dream of a bird. So when Plato said, "The real world is somewhere else," Aristotle quietly answered in his heart, "No, the real world is right in front of us." He respected his teacher deeply, but he also saw a path that led away from Plato's thinking, a path that was more practical, more scientific, more connected to daily life. Still, he never stopped learning. For 20 whole years, Aristotle walked inside the academy's gardens, listened to discussions, debated with future philosophers, and grew into an intellectual giant, even if he didn't realize it yet. But all stories in ancient Greece eventually meet the same turning point: death. When Plato died, the academy changed. Leadership changed, vision changed, and Aristotle realized something important. This place was no longer his home. His ideas were too different. His future lay somewhere else. So he made a bold choice once again. He packed his belongings, said goodbye to the place that shaped him, and left Athens behind. He didn't know where life would take him next. He only knew one thing. He needed to find truth with his own eyes, not with someone else's shadow. And the world was about to send him an unexpected mission, one that would place him beside kings. The teacher of a future king. When Aristotle left Athens, he stepped into a world full of uncertainty. He traveled across seas and mountains, visiting new lands, observing plants, animals, people, and cultures. Everywhere he went, he collected knowledge like a treasure hunter collects gold. But destiny had something special prepared for him. One day, a message arrived from a powerful man, King Philip II of Macedon, a king known for his ambitions, his armies, and his desire to reshape the Greek world. But the message was not about war. It was about education. The king wanted Aristotle to return home and take on a task no ordinary teacher could handle: to educate his young son, a boy named Alexander. At that time, Alexander was not yet the Great. He was just a passionate, energetic, fiery boy who needed guidance. He needed a mind strong enough to shape him. He needed someone who could teach him how to think, not just how to fight. And Aristotle accepted. When he arrived in Macedon, he found Alexander curious, confident, and full of questions, just like he had been as a child. The boy admired heroes, dreamed of conquering distant lands, and wanted to understand the world beyond his kingdom. Aristotle became more than a teacher. He became a mentor, a guide, and sometimes the only person who could calm Alexander's wild ambition. They walked through gardens together, pointing at plants and insects. They studied poetry, science, ethics, logic, medicine, and politics. Aristotle taught Alexander how to observe, how to ask, how to judge. Before you can rule others, Aristotle told him, you must rule your own mind. Alexander listened carefully, and slowly the ideas of Aristotle became the foundation of his thinking. Years later, when Alexander marched across Persia and Egypt and built one of the largest empires in history, he carried Aristotle's teachings in his heart. He often traveled with books recommended by Aristotle. He even ordered his soldiers to collect rare plants and animals and send them back to his old teacher for study. Their relationship was more than teacher and student. It was the meeting of a powerful mind with a powerful will, a partnership that shaped history. But Aristotle's story did not end with the education of a king. When Alexander left to conquer the world, Aristotle returned to Athens. And there, with wisdom gathered from decades of learning, he created something that would become legendary, a place where the world of knowledge would be reborn, a school unlike any the world had seen before. The birth of the Lyceum. When Aristotle returned to Athens, he was no longer the quiet student who had once walked behind Plato in the gardens of the academy. He came back with the experience of distant lands, the confidence of having taught a future conqueror, and a head full of ideas too large for any existing school. So he created his own. A new place for thinkers, seekers, and curious minds, a school called the Lyceum. But the Lyceum was not like the academy. It wasn't built around abstract worlds or perfect ideas. It was built around reality, the world people could touch, measure, and examine. Aristotle did something revolutionary. He turned learning into movement. Every morning he walked with his students through long pathways shaded by trees. They talked, questioned, tested ideas, and explored problems while walking. This simple habit became so iconic that people later called them peripatetics, the ones who learn by walking. Inside the Lyceum, Aristotle created something even more unusual. A research center. He and his students collected plants, animals, fossils, bones, maps, political documents, anything that could help them understand the world. It became the first scientific institution in history, long before the word science even existed. Aristotle organized information obsessively. He wanted to understand everything, from the tiny movements of insects to the behavior of entire nations. He wrote about logic, biology, physics, ethics, politics, psychology, art, dreams, memory, and even the soul. He didn't just write a lot. He created entire fields of study. His ideas were new, practical, and deeply connected to real life, and they attracted students from everywhere. The Lyceum became a living brain, always thinking, always collecting, always learning. But even as Aristotle's school grew, the world outside was changing. News traveled across Greece like a storm. Alexander, his former student, was conquering empire after empire, and with every victory, Alexander's enemies grew more afraid and more angry. Power creates friends. Power also creates shadows, and soon those shadows would reach all the way to Aristotle's door. A world shaken by power. As Aristotle taught in the peaceful gardens of the Lyceum, the world beyond Athens was trembling. Alexander's empire stretched across continents: Greece, Persia, Egypt, India. No one in history had moved armies so fast or won battles so boldly. People admired Alexander, feared him, respected him, but some secretly hated him. And hatred always needs a direction. When Alexander died suddenly in Babylon, the world froze. He was still young, still powerful, still undefeated. Yet in a moment, the greatest empire of its time had lost its leader. Shock spread across Greece. Whispers filled the markets. Fear turned into anger. And a new emotion began to rise among those who envied the Macedonian rule: revenge. Many Athenians saw Aristotle not just as a philosopher, but as the man who shaped Alexander's mind, the teacher of the conqueror, the brain behind the threat to Greek freedom. Rumors spread fast. Aristotle supported the Macedonians. He was loyal to Alexander. He is a danger to Athens. None of it was true, but truth matters little when fear takes control. Soon, powerful politicians and angry citizens targeted him. They wanted him gone. They even planned to take him to court on absurd charges, accusing him of disrespecting the gods. Aristotle knew what that meant. Athens had once judged another philosopher the same way, Socrates, and Socrates had paid with his life. Aristotle refused to let history repeat itself. He left Athens quietly, saying, "I will not allow the city to sin twice against philosophy." He moved to a small house in a peaceful place called Chalcis. He continued writing. He continued thinking. But he stayed away from politics, away from danger, away from the city he once loved. His health slowly weakened. The world around him grew quieter, and in that quiet, Aristotle spent his final days surrounded not by students or kings, but by his thoughts, the thoughts that would outlive him. When he died, he left behind no armies, no monuments, no throne. He left something stronger, a map of the human mind. A foundation for science, logic, ethics, politics, biology, and more. A legacy the world still uses today. Aristotle didn't conquer land. He conquered knowledge. And unlike empires, knowledge never falls. The echo that never fades. Years passed after Aristotle's death, but his ideas refused to disappear. They moved like quiet rivers under the surface of history, sometimes unseen, but always shaping the land above. Long after armies turned to dust, long after kings lost their crowns, Philosophers across the world opened Aristotle's writings and found something rare: clarity, order, a way of thinking that felt like a light in a dark room. His logic became the foundation of reasoning. His biology remained the reference for centuries. His ethics guided rulers, teachers, and ordinary people. His politics shaped discussions about government and civic life. His curiosity about everything inspired the scientific method itself. Aristotle believed that knowledge was not a treasure to hide. It was a fire meant to be shared. And because of that, generations of thinkers carried his flame forward. In medieval Europe, scholars studied his books like sacred texts. In the Islamic Golden Age, brilliant minds preserved, expanded, and celebrated his work. In the Renaissance, his ideas helped rebuild science. In modern times, his fingerprints can still be seen in psychology, biology, logic, storytelling, and philosophy. Everywhere, even now, more than 2,000 years later, whenever someone tries to understand the world by observing, questioning, testing, and thinking, they walk the same path Aristotle once walked with his students in the Lyceum Gardens. His life was not the life of a warrior or a king. He didn't command armies. He didn't rule a nation. He didn't build a palace. He built something far more powerful: a way to think, a bridge between curiosity and discovery, a toolkit for the human mind. And that is why Aristotle never truly died. He became a whisper inside the world, a silent structure behind every question we ask and every answer we search for. His story is a reminder that one person, armed only with ideas, can reshape the future of an entire civilization. And now that you've walked through the journey of his life, you're carrying a small piece of that flame too. If you made it all the way here, then you already know something. Stories like this hit different. They stay with you. They change the way you see the world. So here's the deal. If you enjoyed this journey through Aristotle's life, hit the like button so more people can discover it too. And if you want more stories that teach you English and take you on a ride through history, subscribe and join us. This channel is growing fast, and you're now officially part of it. So don't go far. The next story might become your new favorite.